The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
She's made up her mind to live pretty smart. Learn to budget responsibly right from the start. She spends a little less and puts more into savings. Keeps her blood pressure low and credit score raises. She's cutting debt right out of her life. She tracks her cash flow on a spreadsheet at night.
Boring money moves make kinda lame songs, but they sound pretty sweet to your wallet. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
Hello, and thank you for listening to The History of World War II podcast, episode 537, General Manstein's Backhand Blow. Last time, with southern Russia mostly cleared of enemy troops, though some were contained, the twin operations of Star and Gallop had resulted in the recapture of Kursk, Belgorod, and Kharkov. Celebrations throughout Russia followed this, of course, but the leading Soviet units that had accomplished this were exhausted by their efforts. Meanwhile, Manstein, now in command of the reconstituted Army Group South, was given leeway by Hitler to react to this latest crisis as he saw fit. And what Manstein saw was opportunity. By now, the Russians were thinking of Raputista, that spring thaw that would turn everything into mud, and thus movement would be all but impossible. And the reason that this season of mud was focused on was that, from Stalin's point of view, the enemy was on the run. His proof for this, not that he knew the extent, was that during the Battle of Kharkov, though Hitler had ordered that the city be held, to the last man, to the last bullet, 63-year-old General Paul Hauser, commander of the 1st SS Panzer Corps, who had 2 of his 3 Panzer Grenadier divisions still in Kharkov, nevertheless ordered them to withdraw on February 15th, just before the last corridor was closed by the Soviets. On the other side of the chessboard, there was another summation, but again not knowing the extent. Manstein was guessing that the enemy had lost much of its armor in this recent fighting, between those being destroyed and those in need of repair. And he was right. The Southwestern Front had lost half of its armor. General Popov's front mobile group of 4 corps was down to 53 operational tanks. As for General Golenko's Voronezh front, his 3rd Tank Army only had 6 battle-worthy tanks left. The point is, at this moment, mid-February 1943, it was Manstein who was reading the overall tactical situation accurately, whereas the Soviets were projecting their desires, not a sound basis for victory. Meanwhile, Manstein started his great game to keep the enemy thinking that Army Group South was still retreating. But first, a mental map is needed to get a lay of the land. To keep it simple, for the area being discussed, on the Soviet right was General Golenko's Voronezh front. On the Soviet left was Van Tuten's Southwestern Front. To be sure, there were other Soviet armies to either end of this, like the Bryansk Front to the north and the, Southern Front to the south. But for now, we are focused on the troops of the Voronezh and Southwestern Fronts. Opposing them from north to south, or the German left to the right, was what was left of Army Group B, facing Voronezh, covering the territory north of Kursk, then Army Detachment Keft, which had been Army Detachment Lance, but he was replaced. This unit was facing the Southwestern Front, but would push to the northeast when battle came, as panzers further south of them would rush up to cover their original location. And now, it was time for Manstein to lure the enemy into his trap. The thing to remember is that while the Soviets legitimately pushed the enemy out of Kursk, Belgorod, and Kharkov, Van Tuten and Golenko kept moving their men forward into the vacuum they created. But below this growing salient of exhausted Soviet troops was a gap 80 to 100 miles north to south above the Sea of Azov, that the Germans still controlled. And again, knowing the Soviets had to be tired and overextended, Manstein would use this still German-controlled southern area to spring half of his trap. At his headquarters at Zamporofir, to the southwest of what was about to come, along the bend in the Dnieper River, and about 45 miles due north of Melitopol, Manstein ordered the 1st SS Panzer Corps to pull back, to be close to Krasnograd, located about 50 miles southwest of Kharkov, the most southern of the 3 recaptured cities. Meanwhile, the 1st and 4th Panzer Armies were also to retreat back to another town which was located 100 miles southeast of Krasnograd, or using Manstein's headquarters as the center position on a clock, the SS Corps was making for the 1 o'clock position, the Panzer Armies for the 2 o'clock position, for in between them was the greatest westward extent of Soviet forces, those of the eager Van Tutten. Manstein's idea, quite simply, was to hit this salient, which was a piece of a much larger salient from each side, cut off a section, surround, and destroy it. And things started out well enough. On the morning of February 20th, Manstein had these 2 forces hit Van Tutten's flanks. The 1st SS Panzer Corps drove to the southeast at the Soviet 6th Army. Meanwhile, the Panzer Corps went to the northwest. This left the 1st Panzer Army's 40th Panzer Corps free to hit General Popov's weakened front mobile group located just east of this pincer attack, negating any help it might want to offer. During the night of February 21st, with things going Manstein's way, the Soviet commanders of the 2 flanks asked Van Tutten for permission to retreat and reform their lines. Popov himself was quickly down to 25 tanks. Thus, he would be of little help. But Van Tutten not only said no to this, he ordered them to advance and make for the Dnieper River, to a city just 20 miles north of Manstein's headquarters. Considering how the fighting was going so far, this was an impossibility. Then Van Tutten gave other orders for further operations once this German threat was finished. His field commanders were stunned at his not understanding. In Van Tutten's defense, he, like Stalin, truly believed the enemy was retreating. It's just that they had temporarily turned around to slap the Soviets on the nose to only gain more time and space to retreat faster. One's point of view is their reality. But as this was Soviet Russia, the commanders, still stunned, tried to carry out their orders. One such order had a division of the 25th Tank Corps drive towards Manstein's headquarters, and pushing mightily, the lead tanks came to within 10 miles of the commanding general's location. But then they ran out of fuel, as did the rest of the 25th Tank Corps, which allowed the 48th Panzer Corps, in the words of its commander, to work them over. This broke the back of the Soviet attack, who now retreated, some on foot, others packed into trucks. And while they retreated, the panzers of the SS divisions Das Reich and Totenkopf pulled up parallel to these fleeing trucks and used their machine guns to shoot up the very vehicles packed with men. Meanwhile, the abandoned T-34s were destroyed one at a time. Thus, one Soviet corps after another was surrounded and obliterated.
Summer's here, and Nordstrom has everything you need for your best dress season ever. From beach days and weddings to weekend getaways and your everyday wardrobe. Discover stylish options under $100 from tons of your favorite brands like Mango, Skims, Princess Polly, and Madewell. It's easy too with free shipping and free returns, in-store order pickup, and more. Shop today in stores, online at Nordstrom.com, or download the Nordstrom app.
While Van Tutten was still thinking offensively, Voronov Front Commander Golinkov started to get a sense of what was really happening out there. So he ordered the 69th Army and the 3rd Tank Army to halt and return. Their mission now was to return to their starting points, but to go through the territory just south of Kharkov. For there, the Germans were tearing into the 6th Army's right flank, and they needed help. But to imagine that these two Soviet armies were experienced, determined, and full of vigor would be incorrect. Many of the infantry were so new, they still wore their civilian clothes. There had been little time to train or practice moving as a whole. So, when they did turn south and start to come back the way they came on a parallel course, the entire process was ponderously slow. Still, in time, the turn was made, and then they engaged whatever come upon. But as they were themselves running low on ammunition and fuel, the Soviets themselves were come upon by the SS Grossdeutschland Division on February 23rd. As for the Soviet Sixth Army, as it was further west, closest to the Dnieper River, it was hit from the north and south, the pincer movement, while General Popov's forces behind the Sixth Army was hit from the south and east. By February 24th, Popov only had a few dozen tanks left, while a German force of 400 panzers was hitting his left flank alone. Van Tutten could tell by reports that Popov's tanks were not advancing, though he did not understand why. So he messaged Popov. He wrote, "I wish to remind you emphatically that you were to use all means available to find and annihilate the enemy. I am holding you personally responsible." The reason for the emphatic was that Stalin had pretty much said the same thing to Van Tutten, while he also reminded the front commander these additional operations had been his, Van Tutten's, idea in the first place. So Popov tried to do what he was ordered, which only lost him more tanks, men, trucks, and territory. In response, risking his career and his life, Van Tutten on February 25th suspended all offensive operations and then told Moscow what he did. The hardest part of his message was that he needed more mobile tank workshops, as his were currently surrounded with their respective corps. The eager Soviet commander had truly been caught with his pants down, and the Germans kept coming. In the afternoon of February 28th, 7th Panzer Division reached just south of Izum, about 70 miles southeast of Kharkov along the Donets River, and tore went into what was left of Popov's group. All around this area lay dead Soviet men and destroyed tanks and trucks. The dead here alone was at least 3,000. But zooming out a bit, the Soviet Sixth Army was dying. Now accepting the situation for what it really was, General Rabalko's 3rd Tank Army was detached from Golinko's left wing and sent south to distract the panzers from basically finishing off the Sixth Army. However, they ran into other panzers, but more importantly, the dive bombers and the ground attack aircraft of Luftwaffe 4. For the next 4 days, this rescue force fought for its own survival. Then it fought to retreat, leaving the 6th Army and the 1st Guards Army, now both very bloodied, to fall back to their side of the Donets, 20 miles southeast of Izum, if they could make it. As bad as things turned out for the Soviets, it could have been worse, but the weather forced the Germans to seek shelter at night, giving their retreaters more time to run. Also, the cold had frozen the Donets, making it safe to traverse across. When all was said and done, though, the Soviets had lost 6 tank corps, 5 rifle divisions, and 6 independent brigades. Also, there was now a 120-mile wide gap in the Soviet front. How the tables had turned. By March 2nd, the Wehrmacht had captured 615 enemy tanks and killed some 23,000 Soviet soldiers, with many, many more missing. Now, Manstein could fulfill his promise to Hitler. He would retake Kharkov. Fortunately for Manstein, the 3rd Division of the 1st SS Panzer Corps Totenkopf had returned. On March 9th, Manstein ordered the SS Panzer Corps to head north of Kharkov and close off all traffic north and west of the city. And the Totenkopf was a potent, motivated force. Just to rejoin the 2 other SS divisions, it had had to take on 2 tank corps and 3 rifle divisions of the Soviet 3rd Tank Army, and it did so with precision, surrounding these enemy units and destroying them. At 9:20 a.m. on March 9th, the SS Corps moved out. Eager for revenge in the form of retaking Kharkov, the Totenkopf and Liebstandarte went north, cutting the road to Belgorod, and then they moved closer to the city to carry out reconnaissance. Meanwhile, the Das Reich Division did the same from the west and south, getting into position and then moving to the city's edges itself. For all of this, there was little resistance, so Hauser, in charge of the SS Corps, wanted to attack proper soonest. Das Reich was ordered to hit the western suburbs, while the Totenkopf stayed on the western border to cover their rear. With men and panzers in place, on March 11th, Hauser took one battalion from Totenkopf, gave it to Das Reich and Liebstandarte, and ordered them all to move into the city. But it would not be that easy.
Summer is coming right to your door. With Target Circle 360, get all the season go-tos at home with same-day delivery. Snacks for the pool party? Delivered. Sun lotion and towels for a beach day? Delivered. Pillows and lights to deck out the deck? That too, delivered, just when you want them. Summer your way, quick and easy. Join now and get all the summer fun delivered right to your home with Target Circle 360. Membership required, subject to terms and conditions. Applies to orders over $35.
For the next 3 days, what resulted was intense street fighting, like at Stalingrad. And though the T-34s were out of fuel, they were used as stationary artillery positions, creating strongpoints. And these tactics bled the invaders. After 3 days, the Liebstandarte was down to just 14 panzers. But the defenders, which were not being replaced, like at Stalingrad, were being hunted down. Barely able to keep the panzers at bay, the defenders were simply overwhelmed. And then the rest of the Totenkopf entered the northern part of the city and pushed to the southeast, taking the bridge over the Donets River, thus trapping what remained of the 25th Guards Rifle Division. And soon, this force would no longer exist. Again, like at Stalingrad, the last pocket of resistance was in a tractor factory on the eastern side of the city. But this went quiet by March 15th. Giving his men 2 days of rest, General Hoth then ordered General Hauser's corps to regroup and to drive on Belgorod, 30 miles to the northeast. This city fell much faster than Kharkov. And with that, not only was an Axis retreat no longer needed, but Kursk itself was now threatened from the south, as was the much larger salient around the city. Next, all Manstein had to do was coordinate with Field Marshal Kluge of Army Group Center to attack just west of Kursk from the north and south, and in the process, destroy entire armies of the enemy. 1943 had not started out well for the Axis on the Eastern Front, but it was turning around, thanks to Manstein's tactical brilliance. Greetings, everyone, from Central Virginia. So I just wanted to welcome aboard a new member and thank some people. So we've set up the Battle of Kursk. We've got all that done. So we've had that. Then the Rasputista is going to come, which there's going to be a little bit more action, obviously. And then the Rasputista season of mud's going to come. It's going to shut things down, and then they're going to gear up for Citadel, trying to think of some way to turn this around. So that's where we're at now, and yeah, we should be able to get through that. And then I'm going to stop, go back, and bring the Americans and others, obviously, to North Africa, to Morocco. Operation Torch. So looking forward to that. So as far as members, Stephen Whitby, thank you very much, Stephen. Greatly appreciated. And as far as donations, Brian Mulligan, thank you very much, sir. It's very much appreciated. You're my new best friend. And Mark Jones from Tampa, Florida. Mark, thank you very much for the message included with your donation. You made my day. So I do appreciate that. So I will see you soon with the Battle of Kursk, and then we'll watch to see what the Yanks can do. Take care, everyone.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Welcome to True Spies, the podcast that takes you deep inside the greatest secret missions of all time.
Suddenly out of the darkness appeared Bin Laden.
You'll meet the people who live life undercover. What do they know? What are their skills? And what would you do in their position?
Vengeance felt good. Seeing these people pay for what they'd done felt righteous.
True Spies from Spyscape Studios, wherever you get your podcasts.